The Kings came into Edmonton and stole home ice advantage by turning in a win over the Edmonton Oilers in their first playoff game. We're going to talk all about what went right and a little bit of what went wrong, all on today's episode of Locked On Los Angeles Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, you're listening to Locked On Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, bringing you all your favorite news about your favorite hockey team, the Los Angeles Kings, as we talk all about their very first playoff appearance, and it went pretty darn good, if I do say so myself. My name is Sarah Iafallo, host of this show. Super excited to be bringing you news about the Kings and to be talking to you all about playoff hockey for the first time in Locked On Kings history. It's been a long, weird road with the pandemic and then, the team not being great and everything. But here we are. We have climbed. We've started to climb. We're at like the bottom of the mountain, but we're climbing the mountain, and we are in the playoffs, and I'm super excited to be able to talk to you about it. So on today's show, we're going to take a look at that Game 1 win over the Edmonton Oilers, which is pretty significant for the Kings if you especially look at their recent playoff history and or the lack thereof, let's say. So, of course, as we all know, the Kings went into Edmonton, all the fancy stats, all the analytics, all the very smart media people said, people were out there saying Oilers in 4. Okay, let's all chill because the Kings got a playoff win. So the last time the Kings were in the playoffs, it was 2018. The entire hockey world hadn't turned against the Vegas Golden Knights quite yet. John Stevens was on the bench, and the Kings were looking for another run out of their core group of players. And of course, we all know how that went. The Kings were swept in the first round. In the process, they scored 3 whole goals. They were shut out in 2 of those 4 games. Just not a great experience. The 3 goals came from Anze Kopitar, Alex Iafallo, and Paul Ledoux. Hey, remember him? Well, friends, no matter what happens in the rest of this playoff run for the 2021-22 Kings, at least one demon is exercised because the Los Angeles Kings scored 4 whole goals in 1 game in their opening game against the Edmonton Oilers. It was the first playoff win for the Kings since April 18th, 2016, where they turned a 2-1 win en route to being eliminated in the first round by the San Jose Sharks. It was their only win of the series and their last playoff game win at all, and their only playoff game win at all since lifting the cup in 2014. Your goal scorers back in 2016, Tanner Pearson, and of course, Anze Kopitar. Last night's Game 1 was a game that the Kings weren't expected to win. Looking at the game in all situations, all the fancy stats really tilted in the Oilers' favor. Overall, the Oilers' expected goals for all situations sat at 4.33. The Kings at 4. So an evenly matched game, but all of the edge kind of went to the Oilers. In all situations, they had the edge in terms of possession, scoring chances, high danger chances. At even strength, though, the Kings were the better team. At 5-on-5, the Kings had 65% of the high danger chances, 57% of the overall scoring chances. The expected goals was 2.45, a number, of course, the Kings blew out of the water with 4 goals. And of course, it is those numbers that tells me that this series might be a little bit more competitive than most of the analysts have been suggesting. The Kings have been counted out all season. They've been counted out now, right here in the playoffs. But Edmonton has their own playoff baggage. We all know about it. It's not just like the Mike Smith factor. We'll talk about him later, but he's not the only thing that the Oilers have kind of going against him or have as a challenge. Despite having 2 of the best players in the league, the Oilers were swept last season by the Jets. The season before that turned in only 1 win against the Blackhawks in that bubble season qualifying round thing, which is objectively hilarious, honestly. The only other playoff appearance in the Connor McDavid era ended with a second-round Game 7 loss to the Ducks. So the Kings are playing for pride, for Dustin Brown, but is anyone truly going to call for well, actually, no. I know Kings Twitter. I know the internet. Someone's always going to call for someone to get fired no matter what happens. But realistically, is anyone truly going to call for heads to roll if the Kings lose, if they don't win this playoff series, if they don't win the whole Stanley Cup? No. No one is going to yell about them wasting the prime years of some of the best players on earth. No one is going to sit there being like, oh, the Kings, like, how dare they? What a failure of a season. By all accounts, this team is ahead of schedule. They weren't supposed to be here. No one thought they'd be here. Even the team themselves, the organization, the front office, they talk about like, yeah, this is what we expected. But, realistically, the plan was that they would still be a couple of their seasons out from being truly competitive. So as we've said before, the team is playing with house money right now. Whatever success they have, it's ahead of schedule. It's just a pleasant surprise, and it's great experience for the young guys. Even the guys who are scratches right now. Gabe Vilardi sat out this game. Rasmus Kupari, Jacob Moverari. A lot of the young guys didn't get in this game. We might see them later. Who knows? But this is just great experience overall for them. So you can't complain. We can't complain about what's happening in this game. We especially can't complain because the Kings won. Like, that's great. We're going to talk coming up next about some of the things that went right for the Kings. We'll look at some key moments and key players from game one. But first, the playoffs are definitely a time when even us fans need a little bit of extra energy. We got late nights if you're not in the right time zone. You've got the prospect of endless, terrifying overtime. There is a ton of things that are just going to take up your spare time and take up your energy. And that's a lot. That's a lot to deal with. And it's hard to figure out exactly how to address this in your life. There's a ton of supplements and vitamins and everything out there to help keep you going and keep you ready for action. But the choices can be overwhelming, especially if you're trying to solve a bunch of health problems all at once. Our new partner here at Locked On helps address all of those things that you care about. Better energy, a better immune system, better gut health even. And the best part is that it's convenient, easy to use, and it also tastes great. It is AG1. It's a supplement that gives you 75 different vitamins, minerals, superfoods, probiotics, and much more to help you start your day off right and get your insides in shape. It's so easy to just add a scoop to some water when you're starting your morning, even if you're not a morning person. You basically don't even have to think about it. And it's one simple thing you can do every day to help take care of your body. So no matter what kind of food life you're living, if you're keto, paleo, dairy-free, gluten-free, whatever it is, AG1 will work for you and your lifestyle. AG1 and Athletic Greens came into existence when their founder was looking for an affordable, easy way to optimize his nutrition and deal with gut health issues. And the company is doing great work in the community, donating to organizations that help get food to kids in need. Right now, it is time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop and a cup of water every day, and that is it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. All right, so Kings win. It's fun. It's still like really nice, really thrilling, honestly, to like say that and think about that. The Kings won a playoff game. It's really cool. So they win game one over the Oilers. And one line came up big, and it's exactly who we thought and who we needed it to be. It's that second line led by Phil Danault, Trevor Moore, and Alex Iafallo, who was bumped up there due to the absence of Victor Arvidsson. Danault's playoff pedigree speaks for itself. His masterful job in shutting down players like Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner in the first round last year, and then Mark Stone in the Western-ish conference final. That was a big reason why the Kings went after him in free agency. Of course, no one was like expecting Vegas to do what they did this season in like imploding and being bad. Everyone knows, at least at the time, that if the road to the Stanley Cup goes through Vegas, the way many thought it was going to do before the Golden Knights fell on their faces this season, then you want a quality defensive center who's going to shut down the opposition's best players. Like, you can just imagine Rob Blake watching that Montreal-Vegas playoff series and just watching like Mark Stone's hopes and dreams crumble because Phil Danault was just giving him no space, nothing out there on the ice, and being like, yeah, that's my guy. That's my guy. I'm going to sign that guy. So it's great. Having Danault, as we've said all season long, has been a great addition to the team, has been a great lifting of burden on Anze Kopitar, and shutting down one or both of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. It's a huge job, and it's going to be crucial for the Kings' success. And Phil Danault definitely had the better of not just McDavid, but really both of them in this game. He played a little over 8 minutes against either McDavid or Draisaitl, and during that time, Edmonton managed just one shot on goal in the entire time. That is pretty darn good from Phil Danault. And it's something we're going to want to keep seeing going forward. More stats on that. Leon Draisaitl had 0 shots at 5-on-5. His line was outshot 9-2 as a whole. And they lost their 5-on-5 matchup. McDavid, not much better, really. So as we said, if you look at the game in all situations, advantage Oilers. If you look at the game at even strength, Kings win. So Danault, Iafallo, and Moore, each of those guys factored in on 3 of the Kings' 4 goals, all of which came at even strength. The 4th goal was Brendan Lemieux, of all people. We'll talk about him later. But that was both surprising and fun. Seeing Iafallo have a great game was really good to see, especially given that his hot start to the season sort of petered off pretty quickly, and then he found himself bumped around the lineup late in the year. But if you'll remember, he started the year off on that line with Phil Danault, and they look great together. Both guys kind of have a similar sort of defensive sensibility, and initially, when they were linked up with Adrian Kempe, it also meant that Kempe got freed up to do more in terms of offense, to bring more of his offensive flair, while Danault and Iafallo did the heavy work defensively. Of course, the Arvidsson-Danault-Moore combo has been great. We all can't wait until Victor Arvidsson is ready to come back into the lineup. I think that he is a pretty necessary piece. But this version of the third line is just such a hard-working line. I love the work that we saw from each of them in setting up plays for other guys. The Trevor Moore play from behind the net to get the puck to Alex Iafallo for his goal. The tenacity of everyone to keep plugging at it on Danault's goal, the eventual game winner, which came off that horrible Mike Smith turnover. The save for Mike Smith, like credit where credit is due. That was a great save. That was like, if I was an Oilers fan, I'd be losing my mind. But the play didn't stop. And that's where things went awry for the Oilers, because at no time did they gain possession of the puck. At no time did they get a whistle or stop the play. And that left the Kings to be able to continue plugging in front of that net and let Danault chip that one in. So this line doesn't quit, and that is going to get really frustrating for the Oilers really quickly. Moore ended the night with a goal and 2 assists. Danault and Iafallo each had a goal and assist of their own. If you didn't know, the end of the season, the Kings always do their own kind of like team awards and everything. Trevor Moore picked up the team nod as best defensive player. Danault was named best newcomer and MVP, as well as the Ace Bailey Memorial Award, which is the most inspirational player. And that one is actually voted on by the other players. Trevor Moore's emergence in particular has been so impressive. This is a player who at times last season and even early this year, like I probably literally said it on this podcast. I was like, I've seen enough of this guy. Like, what does he even do here? Well, it's clear what he does here now. As one of the team's leading scorers, a guy who is a menace shorthanded, who just has we talk about like Blake Lizotte having no quit. This guy has no quit either. He's like a literal hometown hero. Like Thousand Oaks native Trevor Moore has become like a meme. And by the way, like I tweeted about this, like I've been in California, just up and down the coast for various reasons. And I was very bummed because I had to drive from Ventura back to LA, which takes you through Thousand Oaks. And I was really disappointed to be like on a time schedule, to be on a time crunch, because I had to be at a place at a certain time, because I really wanted to like stop in Thousand Oaks and pay my respects to our local hero, but didn't have time for it. But Trevor Moore has become like a meme, an icon. Like he is like so exciting this season, like total fan favorite. And he is a guy who just plays with so much energy, no matter what the situation, no matter if the team's up, down, whatever. So it's going to be interesting for the rest of the series to see if Edmonton alters their approach any for game 2. They have already split up McDavid and Draisaitl. They're already on different lines. So it's not like they can be like, we'll change up our lines and keep at least one of them away from Phil Danault. And of course, you can't forget that Anze Kopitar still exists too. So this like poses bunch of problems for any opponent, and the Oilers they've got to be looking for solutions, given how well Danault shut down really everybody that he faced in this game. Coming up next to wrap up the show, we're going to talk about some things that didn't work so well for the Kings. But first, BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your betting stats and sports information. If you go on there right now, you can look up the stats, look up the odds for, will the Kings win the Stanley Cup? Will they win a round? What's the deal? I think they have the worst odds to win the Stanley Cup, but you know what? You're telling me there's a chance. You can get into all of that. You can dig into the stats, the lines, the props, everything, all on BetOnline. You can find all of the latest sports developments, league reviews, news, including the details on this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball, and of course, this weekend's Run to the Roses as the Kentucky Derby is back. So BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sporting wagering information from live betting, playoffs, esports, and more. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. And BetOnline, it is where the game starts. So one big glaring issue that came out of this game is that the Kings, who have been rolling 4 lines for basically most of the season, really only used 3 lines in this game. Your fourth line of Brendan Lemieux, Quentin Byfield, and Arthur Kaliev rarely touched the ice. Lemieux played .259, Byfield .533, Kaliev .742. Byfield and Kaliev each saw just under 3 minutes on the power play. This feels unsustainable. I know some of it is because the lines got shifted around because Victor Arvidsson's out. Things just had to get shoved around, whatever, fine. Lemieux scored. Like we said, he scored a pretty great goal. Like, it was one of those goals where I was like, oh, you are actually good at playing hockey. This isn't good. This isn't good. So we want to keep an eye on how this develops, particularly once the series shifts back to LA. There's obviously a desire to get them more favorable matchups for that line and to keep them away from the top competition as much as possible. But the side effect is you run the risk of burning out your other players. Kopitar played 25-41, Kempe 24-55, Phil Danault 22-45, and that's fine for game 1. But what happens when we get to game 6, game 7? What happens if they win the first round and things keep going? What happens when we get into overtime? You're going to burn out those guys. And when you burn them out, that is when dumb mistakes happen. So keep an eye on the deployment of that fourth line. Keep an eye on who gets scratched, down the line, down towards the end of the season. Especially with kind of resting guys in the final games. Like Gabe Vilardi came in and looked fantastic. I feel like you could do a whole show on what is Todd McClellan's beef with Gabe Vilardi. But Vilardi looked great in his final games, and now he's an extra. So that's frustrating. I feel like all of these young guys on forward are on a pretty short leash. The timetables for the ice time for defense wasn't really bad. It was kind of fairly evenly distributed. So McClellan clearly has a lot more trust in his young defensemen than he does in most of his young forwards. But that's definitely going to be something to watch. And, you just saw in this game what happens with younger, less experienced players, guys who haven't been here before. The goal against from Connor McDavid in the first is a great example of the hesitance of younger, less experienced players. It's the kind of stuff that happens in the regular season, and you're like, well, welcome to the NHL. McDavid basically gets to the net nearly unimpeded because no one could keep up with him, or they couldn't anticipate what he was going to do next, and they looked generally afraid to challenge him in any way. The goal against saw Carl Grunstrom, Blake Lizotte, Dustin Brown, Jordan Spence, and Oli Mata all look pretty clueless. And I get it. He's the best player in the league by most accounts. He makes elite players look stupid. I mean, we've talked about his ongoing sort of beef with Drew Doughty and how Doughty just gets walked by him all the time. So I get it that you can put anyone out there against Connor McDavid and things are going to happen because that's just the player he is. But those are the kinds of plays that are going to develop a little bit differently on the ice when McDavid is facing off against Danault or Kopitar. So it makes sense. You want to keep those guys away from the league's best player. And they'll learn eventually. They'll figure it out. Either they'll figure it out or they won't be in the NHL, because like you have to be able to figure these things out. The goal against Leon Draisaitl was also basically a failure of anyone on the Kings to do anything about him. Like watching that play, it's on the penalty kill for the Kings. Watching it, everyone goes and chases the puck into the corner on the penalty kill. Like literally all 4 Kings go to, if you're watching it, they go to the left, they go to the boards, all chasing after the puck. They leave Draisaitl alone at the dot. He's basically there to like cherry pick. And what do you think he's going to do? There's no one in front of him, no one anywhere near him. He's basically one-on-one with Jonathan Quick. So I'd love to hear the take of the penalty killers on that one, why all 4 of them thought it was necessary to go to the same spot and just forget entirely about Leon Draisaitl. It's not like you forgot about, like, no offense to him, but like you didn't forget about Zach Kassian. You didn't forget about like one of these guys who plays, 5 minutes a night or whatever. You forgot about like literally one of the best players in the league. So fortunately, the game had the right outcome, but imagine if that was the game winner. Or imagine if it gave the Oilers the momentum to really spark a comeback at the end of the game. It's a bad look, and hopefully they learned something from it. It felt like a lot of panic from players, and it was all guys who should know better too. That was the really annoying part. Like, you don't all have to go the same spot on the ice. That's something that like you teach little kids, is like, hey, do you see a spot on the ice where everyone is wearing the same jersey as you? Don't go there, because they don't need you there, most likely. It's to go somewhere else. Like, don't leave a guy alone in the dot facing off against your goalie. It was a beautiful goal. Like, you can't really get mad at it, but you can, because it didn't need to have happened. And I don't think we even really need to talk about special teams. The Kings allowed 0 power play goals to the Oilers in the regular season, which was honestly like super impressive. Not the case for this game. They allowed 2 on 4 opportunities in game 1. Meanwhile, the Kings had 4 power play chances of their own, and they couldn't convert. So while the Kings are winning the even strength battle, like we talked about, and that is great, and that is like bodes really well for them, they're going to need their special teams to contribute pretty quick if they want to feel at least a little more comfortable in these games, if they want to pick up some wins, and if they want some insurance goals, let's say. Again, 4 chances on the power play. Kings had nothing. So that is a little bit of a spot of concern, but we also knew that going in. We knew that the Kings special teams were meh at best. So we're going to have to hope that they get not meh over the course of the rest of the series. So I'm really excited that this was the outcome. I'm really excited that the Kings went in, stole that game, are playing with confidence. I feel like if you read any sort of analysis of this series, it's hard to count the Kings out, because they like we said, they're playing with house money. They have nothing to lose. There are no expectations. Everyone expects them to lose. Everyone expects Oilers in 4, Oilers in 5, Oilers in 6. You even heard it here on the show, Oilers in 6. And whenever you're playing like that, when you're like, no one expects anything from us, crazy things can happen, especially when you factor in the whole Dustin Brown thing, and that this is his last season. I think this is going to be fun. I hope it's going to be fun. So we'll continue keeping up with the Kings versus Oilers series, and also the Reign are starting their postseason as well. On tomorrow's show, we've got Jay Foster, a friend of the show, and covering the Reign online as well. So he's going to be on the show for a special Ontario Reign playoff edition. They take on the San Diego Gulls, so we're going to preview that series, look at some key matchups, key players, as we get ready for the Reign to take on the playoffs as well in their best of 3 first round, because it's the AHL. It's going to be weird like that. So that is it for today. Thank you so much for listening. I'm so glad that we're all here experiencing postseason hockey together. If you want to hear more from me, you can find me on Twitter at RightSaidSarah. If you're watching on the YouTube, it's right down there. If you're not watching on the YouTube, it's WRITE, said Sarah with an H. Locked On Kings is available at Locked On LA Kings on Twitter. You can find me yelling about games and Phil Danault and all that great stuff online. The show is, of course, available wherever you get your podcasts, also on YouTube. So make sure you're listening, watching, subscribing, get notifications, tell your friends about it, and let's get pumped to watch the Kings and the Reign battle in the postseason. So thanks so much for listening. That is it for today. Until next time, this has been Locked On Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.